Here from live. We are in Nairobi, Kenya. It's around 10:15 p.m. We're supposed to have started the live with our guest for tonight. Her name is Emily. She is a part of the BAs for Bitter Sling, which does produce amazing bitters. We are going to talk about bitters. We're going to talk about cocktail culture and how it looks in the COVID situation or in the COVID era, and what are some of the tricks or stuff that we need to learn. Also around sustainability. I think this is going to be a good job. So let's do this. I'm super stoked to have Emily tonight. Hi, Emily.
Oh,
Good to see you. How have you been?
I've been really great. It's good to see you too. It's been
You've
quiet
been on you've been on the run, right? You've been busy. What
well
have you been up to?
a little bit. I mean, it's lockdown. I'm still not working on my regular days, which is
Okay.
long, but I'm trying to stay busy, especially with bitter thing. We're trying to get things going, and I can't be doing nothing anymore.
I mean, you are just before we start. I mean, so you're a hero in the industry. You've done a couple of interesting things, man. But you make it look easy. But before we start on that, I mean, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone who's watching tonight or
Yes.
later?
Well, I'm Emily. I'm originally from Montreal, Canada. I where I've worked in the hospitality industry for over 10 years. Um, mo- 5 of them in specialized in cocktails. So I've been a bartender, a barback. Recently, before coming to the UK, I was a bar manager. So I've done a bit all rounded. And last year, I decided to move to London, pack up my stuff, and like I've always wanted to see London, live in London. It was a dream of mine, and I was just like, why not? Let's do it. It turned out that it was the perfect year to move to another country with the pandemic. But I've been really lucky to find. I mean, I got my dream job right after playing at Swift. I couldn't be happier with. Like, I love the team. I love the bar. So like the lockdown and everything. Yeah, it's annoying, but even through all of that, I've been lucky. I discovered London. I made friends, and recently, Bitter Thing launched in the UK. It's a brand that I've known for a long time. Lauren and Jonathan are longtime friends as well. So I was really, really happy and honored when they asked me to be part of the brand ambassador team to spread the love of Canadian bitter. So I'm really looking forward to that when we reopen.
I mean, but you've already been doing that. I mean, for the longest time, I know you love bitters. You've spoken about bitters, and so I know. I mean, for most people who may not know what bitters is, you want to tell them what bitters is and why we should actually have bitters, because we all have different stories to share.
Well, bitters, they're like, I like to think of them as the spices of cocktails. So there's that thing that we add to cocktails. We will add the depth, link flavors, not necessarily be the star of the show, but a little bit like you'd add some chili in a tomato sauce. Well, you want to add some bitters in a cocktail. So they're really there to add layer. They all some different brands work differently. Some of them are really they have a more complex kind of flavor structure, and they will really underpin flavors more than really put something in your drink, whereas other are really more single flavor focused, which they will bring a lot of that specific flavor. For example, lavender. If you use the lavender bitter in something like a Tom Collins, well, you really get that floral flavor coming through, whereas if you're gonna use something like Angostura aromatic, you'll get spices, but it'll be more like a kind of underpinning rather than one thing coming through.
So talking about bitters, I'm sure you're very curious as to why I started the farm, you know. And for the guys who are listening, yes, I'm actually running this through the farm page because number one, I think everybody knows the bitters is not something that is available across the different markets. Sometimes you find it, sometimes it's not. Even the simplest bitters like Angostura is a major challenge in some markets. And so for me, ideally, I wanted to start the farm because I realized if you cannot have those particular brands in that market, why don't you take your knowledge and just put it back into the land, or what you know from your folks, and use it to actually create something, So that was the struggle that I actually had, and that is what led to actually starting out the farm, which is something that I have also wanted to see more people get into, because I feel like bartenders or chefs, we need to connect ourselves to the farmers, because we are basically the last people on the chain. But then we need to know where our food comes from. We need to know where our spices or our botanicals come from, so that way, in any time we make a drink or a dish, we understand what is this farm to table concept all about. Is it just about fruits or spices? It has to be a comprehensive solution to every one of us.
I agree, and it's also one of the reason why I really believe in bitter sling. It's something that Lauren and Jonathan believe in, and we have a great relationship with our producers and our suppliers, and everything that we use to make the bitters are um, eco-friendly, and they are like responsible, so people are getting paid what they should be getting paid for their work. And it's something that I definitely believe in. There's a lot of work around that to be done in bars for sure, but I think it's a conversation that's been going around more and more in the past years, and people are being conscious. And what I really like to see is people making like little gestures. Like it's not like about changing everything from like yesterday to tomorrow. It's more about realizing those little things that we can make that will make a change in the long run, and those little habits that we can start changing. And more people are doing that, and I think that's really great, because sometimes you're just the bartender. What I mean is, you don't necessarily have influence over the operations of the bar, but if you yourself you pay attention to those little things while you're there, you're already going to make a difference. And I think that's great that people are starting to do that.
Would you consider bitter as a form of medication? I think that's a question that most consumers have. Is it medicine, or is it just something that we...
Well, when it was created back in the days, a long time ago, yes, they were actually medicine, because a lot of roots and barks and botanicals have kind of medicinal effects on the body. I'm gonna say yes for myself, because I use teas and herbs a lot. I have an upset stomach all the time, so I get and I find that aromatic bitters, especially like something like Kensington bitters, that like quinine and stuff, will really help my stomach. So I drink bitters and sodas all the time, so I use them a little bit as a medicine in my daily life. So everyone believes in different things, but I think they do serve a little bit of that purpose if you think of them in a larger sense.
So what's interesting is, traditionally in the African society, though we didn't have most of it, so we have like two different things that we need to look at. So in the African society, we had the botanicals, yes, but people did not distill the botanicals into the spirit, right? So they normally will have the barks boiled by their grandmothers or their grandpa, and that stuff was really bitter. And you will take that like 3 or 4 times a day. So the advantage of that was like you're taking the pure concentrated stuff, but then there's no like measure. You don't there's not a measuring cup. It's just like a cup of it like 3 times a day. But now when you look at it from now the other side of the perspective of where we are now making bitters for the bar, I don't think that traditional concept will have worked for the modern era. So the good thing about now what we have with bittered sling and all these other bitters is that now you're having the same value, but at a much more smaller portions. You're now not making.
Definitely. Like I've tasted like a few of the barks, so especially quinine, and just like as an infusion, because I want, you're just curious, and it is a little intense, too intense probably, but in a well blended.
But you should try it when it's boiled. Like try boil the quinine bark.
Okay,
and just the pureness of that thing will make you understand why the palate is actually interested in the bitter stuff. Like we tend to believe that our tongues like sweeter stuff, but then interesting thing is that once you develop a retention for bitter stuff, it's like your tongue is actually okay with it. So we graduate slowly from the sweeter to the sour and the bitter. So even when you think about cocktail development, well, you start from a point of sweeter drinks like mojitos. The more you get into the bitter stuff and the more your palate develops, the more you realize it's actually not that bad after all.
Definitely. I remember my days when I started bartending, and I ran my first Negroni was like something I couldn't believe, and and I grew used to it, and now I can't get enough of it. I don't have the most bitter palate. Some people enjoy it a lot more bitter than I do, but I like a little bit of bitterness. I think it just gives so much depth, and I like that the bitterness I find carries so much flavor. So a drink that has a little bitterness will be, I find, will be longer. You'll taste it longer, and it'll be a little more complex. And
Not
I'm
enough. It's not even just more complex. You'll take it much more less.
yeah,
When stuff is sweet, you tend to overdose on everything. But when stuff is bitter, you're like, okay, fine. I gotta take this thing really, really slow because there's no hurry, you
yeah.
know. So while you may take like orange juice, like a glass, you can take a bottle of Campari like that. It's you probably get to like the third sip and you're like, nah, it's not working.
I agree. I agree. Smaller quantities, but it reveals, it opens up if you drink it in too much quantities. And we all did the shots of Fernet thing because it was the cool thing to do, but I really like to sip it more than I like to drink it like that. That is a shot.
So weird enough, I actually love Campari and coffee. I don't. There's a weird combination around it that is so Campari and espresso works well. So if you have a very bitter palate, like once you get used to that, it's like I'm okay. I don't really need sugar.
Yeah,
But
I
then
can.
again, it's not like yeah, it's not like for everyone's palate. Like unless you just wanna get used to that core bitter but then full of complexity. Because then again, you have the complexity of espresso coffee, and then you've got the complexity of this other thing, which is when you put them together, it's just like
I agree. And one of my favorite things to do is put like our Arabica coffee bitters in a Negroni or an Americano. It really, really complements well that the flavors in the Campari, and it adds exactly. It really adds a depth to it. Really make it more complex. It's one of like the secret back pocket thing that I really like to do.
fun fact. Kenya and Ethiopia have like the biggest coffee plantations. I don't know if you know about this.
I do.
So I'm going to give you a challenge. You, Jonathan, and Lauren, y'all need to get yourself down here, taste some really good ass coffee, then we can decide whether I'm not gonna say anything, but I'm just gonna say like you guys take Starbucks coffee, man. Like you need to take proper coffee from the farm. That's like
I agree.
then
I can't stand Starbucks coffee. I get my coffee from a small company that gets their coffee directly from the farm as well, from my house. It comes from all over the world. I try to pick a different one every time, but I agree with you. And honestly, as soon as when international travel becomes a thing, for sure, Kenya is a big like a country that I would really want to discover. It's so different from like how we live here. I would really, really love to share with that.
then the good thing about it is that you get to see the variety of coffee that is from the entire region. So when you speak about coffee, like I normally tell people, do you understand we're in one particular region, but every country has its own type of coffee, and even within the same particular country, there are different varieties based on the different regions. So you can probably get specialty coffee from across the entire region that will not taste the same. Some taste like pomegranate, some taste like kiwi with undertones of chocolate. And I'm like, this is the stuff that you don't get to read in your books. When you even talk about making bitters. So and that's the advantage that some of us have. Like we may not really necessarily make it in large, but then when we have the coffee beans here, we get to play along with so much of this stuff.
It's an amazing resource that you have, and I'm really looking forward to looking more into it. I love coffee. I live my life by coffee, and especially in recent year, I've started to notice exactly like what good coffee is and look into more into it. I've had coffee from Ethiopia for sure. I don't know if the place where I get it from has coffee from Kenya, but I will definitely look into it and make sure I get some Kenyan coffee for my house.
Let me see if you know. Do you know the difference between Kenyan coffee and Ethiopian coffee?
I do not. You're gonna have
That's an
to.
assignment. That's an assignment I'm giving you. What's the
Okay.
difference between Kenyan coffee and Ethiopian coffee?
Okay, I will find that out. And I'll put it on my Instagram so everyone can have the answer
The assignment.
when I fulfill.
Do you have any, feel free to ask me any question. I'm sure you have loads of questions for me. I
I
mean,
want to like the farm. How is it something? How did you get started with that? Where did like I understand why you wanted to do it, but how like do you have the land already available? Did you purchase
yeah.
it? Because
No, the land is sitting. So, okay, how it started was first and foremost growing up with a grandmother who makes botanical teas and all this stuff. I, for one, when I was growing up, I didn't like it. I didn't get the concept. Why we've been forced to take this thing down our throats. So like for 10 years of my life, I was literally just going against it. I was like, I don't understand this. Now you grow up and then you get into this industry and you start to learn about herbs, spices and stuff like that. Then stuff gets interesting. You start to taste stuff and then you're like, wait a minute. Whatever these Italians, whatever these Europeans are doing, we have the same stuff here. But nobody is distilling this stuff. People here just boil or turn it into ash, whatever it is, and then you take that stuff, and it looks like drinking chocolate that is without milk and is very bitter. And then so I was like, you know what, this is very interesting. And so pre-corona, I was like, I started to actually learn more about these different traditional, trees that are found in Africa, and I found it very interesting that it's a type of knowledge that you may not find 20 years from now because people are not so keen in putting interest into stuff that can go away. This is knowledge that you may not necessarily find in books. You need to find it from older older folks. Now, Corona hit, and we're like, you know what? Because of the land that we had or the space that we had where we stay, I was like, I'm gonna start this project, knowing that I want people to be well, but at the same time, can the bartenders in the community start to think about it from a different perspective? We talk about sustainability, we talk about keeping ourselves healthy and mindful. And in the process of going through depression, I was like, we need to find ways to make this better. So first and foremost, every time you grow a tree, you get a bag. It's a green bag. So you kind of want to plant something every other single day once you start falling in love with trees. Number two, what is more better than fresh aromatherapy from trees or botanicals that are within your space? So I was like, growing the lavender, you wake up in the morning and you smell the fresh lavender, the fresh lemon verbena. That is so good. Like it's so different from when you go to a store and just buy like the processed stuff. And then the fact that now you can use it in your food or you can use it in your drinks makes things better. So typically now, I got to a point last year whereby I literally tried to recreate my idea of a syrup based on the stuff that was growing, and then take that concept of a syrup and work it in very simple classic drinks. And by the time 1 month was done, I was like, you know what, I am done playing with syrup concepts. Because literally I had done almost everything with syrup. Then I was like, maybe I should do it in a shrub or in a vinegar. So I bought loads of apple cider, which I did the same concept. So and I started to take down notes, and I was like, you know what, what's the difference? So now, even when I look at thinking about how to make a cocktail or how to develop a cocktail, I can be able to think about not just the pairings, but what works with what. So right now, I can say, for example, I love the fact that strawberry can work with lemon thyme. That's something that I never particularly thought about. And nutmeg, whatever. So it's more or less now combining my knowledge of what spice, works with what herb, with what fruit, so that when I create even a non-alcoholic drink, I'm able to think these three things can go together without the necessary use of alcohol or bitters. So yeah.
That's really great. Were you um I'm very with plants. Like I don't have the gift of making plants live. I wish I did. Is it something that you struggled with, or were you adept at working the land? Or
I mean, growing up in with people being farmers, I think it's natural. It's not natural, but I think just the fact that every time we went back to the countryside to stay with grandma, there was this routine whereby you had to farm, you had to check on the cows, the chickens, and all that. So it was something that I grew up with. Now, the weirdest part about where I stay, I live probably 10 kilometers away from from the main national park, which is like the Nairobi National Park. So when we moved here, we had a chance to live with gazelles and all these things. And I tell people, this is something that you may never get to see it in books. But when I was growing up, I used to see gazelles and hyenas and all these wild fruits and stuff like that. Now what I see are monkeys already in the farms. It's annoying. They're vermin. Like they just come and just
how do you get rid of them? How do you manage not get rid of them, but how do you coexist with the
you
monkeys?
can't.
You
They don't ask you for permission. They don't even have they just go and raid whatever is in the farm. And they once they're done, they disappear. And you can't keep chasing these things, so you just let them be. So there are times across the farm when you have this like um especially when fruits are starting to come out, they can tell. And then they come in their hordes of family. I don't know, it's like they like come. And so like 2 weeks ago we had this incident whereby the farms that are growing fruits around the area, they're growing, pawpaws, they're growing guavas, they're growing all these loquats, bananas. The monkeys will come and just sit on the trees and eat the whole day, just literally just, and then they're like, and then when they see you, they disappear.
so you just have to be faster, take it before they do, kind of thing.
The only other option is to fence the fruit trees because that's the only other option you have. And some of these fruit trees you can't fence them up from the top because literally they are, they're fully mature. So it's a struggle. It's one of those things that farmers go through. Like I tell people, yes, farming is good, but then again, the struggle of farming is that you have, number one, stuff like monkeys, stuff like elephants, stuff like locusts. I mean, you need fertilizer. Are you gonna do organic farming or are you gonna do commercial? So like for us, I choose to go through the organic farming method, which is slightly more expensive but also more cautious. But then also that means organic medicine. How do you learn how to make organic medicines for the farm? That's a lot to learn within an entire year. And that's the kind of knowledge I was like, we need to share this to people so that whenever someone says, for example, a punnet of strawberries is $3 or $4, you understand what's the difference between the one that is coming from a commercial farm and the one that's coming from an organic farm, because one will be slightly expensive because the care that has been put into that is more. And that's something that we need to start thinking about even as we create menus or as we think about how to cater for the community.
I like that. I like that. Where do you see this project going in the next 5 years, let's say?
I mean, I would love to see more people get into farming. Honestly, I've seen, I saw Kiata from Atlanta, Sips of the Garden doing it. I mean, that's the same concept I want people to understand. We are not just bartenders, we are not just chefs. Can we know where our food is coming from? Can we actually grow them? And if you have a challenge, please feel free to reach out because some of us have gone through this. We have burnt our fingers. It's not like it's easy, but then you gotta try. And then when you burn your fingers, we're there together. We're there to tell you what you did wrong.
I agree. It's a really great, I mean, it's a really great project. Growing up in the city, I'm I'm not great at farming. I respect the hell out of the people that do it. It's hard work and it's really impressive. And for sure, I would like to learn it and like get good at it, and maybe in the future a little bit at if I have a house one day for sure. How big is your farm for now?
I mean, the one where the botanicals are is probably half an acre, and it's it. And then of course, because we didn't pipe. We live like literally just carrying jugs of containers of water. So my hand gets tired lifting all this stuff. It's not easy work, man. But then again, it's rewarding because you get to put a smile on people's faces. You get to see people enjoy good food because that's what it's about. In the end of the day, I want people to always remember that taste or whatever because like when I started, for example, to grow like the 10 different varieties of mint I have in the farm, I was like, I needed people to understand if you're going to make a mojito, for example, mint is not mint, you know. If you're going to make something with lavender, lavender is not the same. There's English lavender, there's Spanish lavender, there's French lavender, and all of them taste different. All of them work different. So it exposes you to just the fact that every botanical out there, never assume it's obvious. It's never obvious. There is nothing obvious about thyme or whatever you're using.
I like it. What's your best success story of farming? Is there something that you had a hard time growing at first and then you succeeded? Is there something that's harder to grow than other things?
I mean, there are some things that are harder to grow than other things, and there are some things that are easier to grow. I think number one of the hardest things to grow out is the bay leaves, the curry leaf. Those are like the things that first and foremost to get them is hard. Number two, to grow them, it needs patience. Bay leaf, curry leaf, vanilla bean takes a lot of time. But then again, when you think about it, if you grow it now, 5 or 10 years down the line, it's more or less something that's gonna serve not just you but your children or the generation after you. I like to think of farming as a gift that you leave people with even after you're gone. It's like planting a tree that you never get to sit on. You know, you grow this tree, but the people who are gonna enjoy it are the people who come after you. So every time you think about farming or you think just generally about how to save the environment, you gotta think about how it's all interconnected. Because
Yeah,
for me,
for us city dwellers that don't have beautiful land to grow things on, any tricks or tips for us?
I mean, these urban gardens, I do believe everyone can start an urban garden. You need it just as like a trough, just a trough almost the size of, okay, if I was to, my hand, but twice this, depending on how big your apartment is, then you can plant different things in season and try to use that as for especially for people who are staying in apartments. I usually try to advise them to create in a space for indoor plants and outdoor plants. There are some plants that can survive indoors, such that you can actually have them and you cut the cost of making your cocktails even in the house. You know, stuff like mint, stuff like so the different types of mint can actually grow in the house. The lemon thyme, oregano, those are the stuff that literally they don't take a lot to grow. They just need a small space. But then there are certain things like the lemon verbena, which when it decides to grow, it's freaking huge. You know, the lemon verbena and all this. So like for guys who are starting, I will normally advise play around with the French lavender, play around with oregano, thyme, mint, the different types of mint, depending on which mint you like. And that is just a basic start, you know, that you can use
I like it.
either for your kitchen or your drinks.
I'll definitely give it another go. I'm a
Yeah.
I'm a serial plant killer. Unfortunately, I keep trying, and I will keep trying again. I can I will do that as
And
well.
especially for like the chamomile, chamomile can grow outside the patio. the outside. So if you're staying in an apartment, of course, I'm assuming everybody has like this outside patio that has a bit of light. I mean, it can grow. It will take around 2 to 3 months, but then when it starts to bloom, you have enough fresh chamomile for you to use. And as we know, chamomile is good for what? Inducing sleep for guys who have a problem with insomnia, stuff like that. So
Yeah, that I do take chamomile to at night to sleep. So for sure it grows. I'm lucky, I'm very privileged. I have a balcony in my apartment, so I can definitely try that out. Um, but I'm sure that like I can always we can always get together, so a neighbor that doesn't have that outside space, we can share and they can grow something inside,
yeah,
something outside.
and even talking about it, you don't need soil to grow stuff. You have the potting mix, which is like a soilless solution for people who are in apartments. So you don't have an excuse not to grow stuff or to save the environment using plants. Like every one of us should just get it that farming saves lives, farming saves hospitality. How are you going to talk about making me a mojito and you don't know how to grow mint? Like, or you don't know the different types of mint? I'll be like, I don't understand.
Well, I think it's great. It's something that we don't necessarily pay attention a lot to, more and more, but not everyone does, and I think it's a great tip to. I'm definitely gonna look into more, and I promise you, I will by the end of the year I will have a successful garden on my on my balcony. I will
At
try.
least try out, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm sure you do have loads of questions as well. I mean, I don't know if people have any questions for me because I feel like I needed people to know that so that you understand that that journey is important, so that even you or and the one thing I've learned, especially for people who are living in apartments, if you guys can come together as a community and agree that everyone can grow something different, then when it's in bulk, what you do is you exchange, you exchange your chamomile for, your friend's lavender, which means that each of us is benefiting from each other and still keeping the drinks flowing. So you can try the chamomile this week. Next week you'll be like, let's do lavender at your place,
Yeah,
whatever works. Anyway,
yeah, creating a community where like everyone produces something and then shares with everyone else. Definitely, and it's a great lesson for us to learn. Would you like at some point, like in your farm project, to like teach people how to farm, to receive people when we can, when it's allowed in Kenya?
I
And
mean, I definitely would love the opportunity to just go around and teach people how to grow stuff, get them setting up their own gardens, um, getting them learning about these different botanicals. Because then again, the only way you can learn is if you spend a lot of time researching, and not just researching on this like stuff you can grow, but how you can use it, especially how you can use it to either make a bitters, a shrub, a syrup, whatever it might be, and understand that there are different things and these different things are affected differently. So, for example, one key thing I've learned is that chamomile can work in an infusion of honey, but then when you try it in syrup, it has it has its own difficulties. So it's something that you need to now start seeing and thinking about what works with what. So that when you go behind and now start creating your concepts, you remember, by the way, for example, English lavender isn't so good with water. So what do? You avoid using it in water, but you can make a salt with it, a lavender salt with it.
what is the best lavender uh, to drink in an infusion? Because I love lavender tea, but unfortunately, I'm not. I drink whatever lavender is around, unfortunately. But what is the best you think lavender for drinking?
It depends. So it depends on how you're using it. Then again, you see that's how complex it gets. So for example, the French lavender, if you make a tincture of it,
Mm-hmm.
then it brings out the entire aroma of the perfumery if that's what you're going for. If you're going for the sweetness but with a slight touch of perfumery, then the Spanish lavender or the English lavender can be good if you're infusing it with either honey or like a maple syrup and stuff like that. So you don't directly boil the lavender. You just let it sit in the sugar syrup, and then you leave it for a couple of I think a day or so, and then you strain it off. It works.
I've never
Because
tried.
the idea behind it is for you to retain the concentrated nature of it without losing its properties. When you think about it, do you want to retain that? And if you want to do it, then what's the best way? So it's a question about moisture and sugar or what is the best preservative around it.
I agree, and that's a great tip. I mean, I'm Canadian, so maple syrup is close to my heart, and I've never had lavender and maple syrup together. So I will definitely another assignment. I would definitely try that this week. I will
Okay.
some. I'll make a mix of maple syrup and lavender. I love lavender. So, and I'm just back from Canada with a lot of maple syrup. So I definitely try that.
For me, so interestingly, I love maple syrup. Hey, wow, I'm even going to shrub this. Oh my, I love maple syrup with lemongrass, lemon thyme, lemon verbena, um, and bay leaf. Either of those can work well with maple syrup. And then when you have that, then that infusion can work well with either rum, tequila, gin, or vodka, depending on what you're using.
That's
And it
amazing.
carries out.
I
Yeah.
never, I never really thought of that because I, I've been raised on maple syrup, and there's a way that we use it that you don't. Sometimes effective. You think about other ways. I've never thought about lavender or lemon verbena or lemongrass, and I mean, just you saying it, I can understand how great it is, and I'm really excited to try it. And I guess that's why we need to talk about each other's culture because we use things differently. I mean, for us, it's a no-brainer. We use it with dark spirit, but we don't use it.
I think it's just because people don't want to explore. So one of the other thing that I happen to be is that I like playing around with food and flavors. And so some of the stuff that I get to discover, it's not stuff that like you will discover on a random basis. So for example, um, coffee and vanilla bean work well together, right? But then if you do coffee, vanilla bean, and bay leaf, and especially if you're getting a fresh bay leaf, the fresh bay leaf brings out that fresh spiciness of the bay leaf that you get, which is very different from the dried stuff. So if you're to combine that, you can actually create something around it that is so simple but yet so complex. And it's not rocket science, but then some people say it is. I don't understand. Maybe it's how I look at things or how I,
Well, sometimes it's I guess it's how we're used to doing things. Sometimes like I I understand what you mean. Sometimes there's things that come to me and it feels normal, and other people, I think it's just how we were raised. Sometimes we're used to using something in one way, and it just seems that this is what it is, and then at some point someone, that's why it's important, that's why I love sharing and having discussions with people, because it makes me like, people have other ideas, we all have different palettes, and we learn every day. So learning things from that, I think it's really great. I'm curious about the cuisine in Kenya. I haven't sampled much of it, unfortunately, I have to say.
we
um
love barbecues. We love barbecues, number one.
Barbecue is the thing.
I
I
mean,
know,
like,
but about flavors, what kind of flavors do you usually, what's the traditional flavors of Kenyan food?
oh, it's so okay. Traditionally, it's hard to pick what is traditionally Kenyan because number one, we have like 42 tribes in the entire of the country, which means everyone has their own preference, you know. But then when it boils down to like what the people in the city enjoy, I mean, just like every other typical city out there, they enjoy barbecues, they enjoy burgers and steaks and stuff like that. But then the thing is that we have all these different restaurants that have all these different types of cuisine. So now that's why it's a metropolitan with all this weird whatever. But then folks like us, whatever is on the table, we'll eat and judge. And of course,
You must
because
have
we,
you must have a favorite dish that you like to cook.
I mean, what I think I do love artisan chocolates. So we have a couple of artisan chocolatiers in in Kenya who do an amazing job trying to create different pairings. So like one of the pairings I love is this chocolate and chili thing that just seems to work well. That
Yeah,
if you translate it even into something else, it does work. Like it's funny how you wouldn't think that chocolate and chili will work, but then you put the same concept on a drink and it does work.
I love chocolate and chili. I'm not the most. I don't eat the most spicy food, but a little bit of heat with something rich like chocolate, absolutely fantastic. I'm right there with you.
And the good thing is the chocolate comes, so everybody knows cocoa grows in the west of Africa. So literally we can get it, the cocoa beans can come here and people can process it here. Or we get it much better because you can get it as dark as you will want it, which is another interesting fact because of the trade across the countries, which is good, which says a lot.
Mm, I like that. Chocolate
But
is a
I love, but if we're looking at like just general food, I love a steak with coffee bean, like ground coffee on top, coffee and
fry
black pepper, and
and cook them.
yeah,
Huh. Like as like a
then
steak
medium rare. Yeah, steak, just steak. Yeah,
with
a
coffee.
T-bone steak
Love
with
that.
coffee and the good stuff.
You make like a rub, like you rub
Yeah,
like a crust
yeah,
of coffee in your on your steak.
yeah. I
I love.
mean, for me, coffee, I love that. Like that's just good. And then of course it's gotta have like a sauce that is either rum based or bourbon based, depending on what I'm feeling on that particular day.
Okay, okay, okay. That's a great meal. Wow. I
Who doesn't like a good steak? Nothing overdone, with
when I
potatoes, just simple stuff.
eat, but when I do crave meat, about once I have red meat about once a year. But when I have my steak, I go for like the base steak I can. So maybe this year I'll try the steak with coffee. That would be a great steak for me to have.
Where I stay, I don't know if you know about this, the Maasai who are like the largest pastoralist community, they have like loads of cows. And when they start to eat cow meat, especially, they enjoy. They can eat like a kilo or 2 kilos a day. So if you grow up around people like that, like meat is not foreign, it's natural.
Oh,
And then
absolutely.
when you hear people talk about how red meat is bad, I'm like, which red meat are you talking about?
No, but
We
and it's you the meat you get, uh, or the meat that the Maasai eat. It's meat that they themselves raise and they prepare,
Yeah,
and I like that meat. It's just I decide I don't buy meat from like big industrial producers. That's why I don't eat it. So when I choose to eat it, I try as much as possible to um to eat it from nice places. But I have nothing against meat. I just choose not to eat a lot of industrialized meat. So I don't like to support.
like they have their cows.
But it's
You
delicious.
know, they lit-
I like that.
they literally walk with their cows for hours on end every single day.
I've never met a cow. I'd love to do that. I'm very
Um,
and I'm looking forward to the day I can come to Kenya and experience the nature.
experience, and the good thing is you're going to experience both sides of the coin. You're going to experience the upper side of the city where people are more, yes, all dressed up, all dolled up, and then we take you to the other side where you're going to meet now the real side of the city.
I love it. Get my boots on and get my. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not too proper. I love to get my hands dirty for sure. I just there's less opportunity, and I think we should create those opportunities, and I'm definitely going to do that for myself, and I encourage everyone else to do that for themselves as well. Create those
Yeah.
opportunities to learn from
As
culture.
and
Yeah.
that's why I keep coming back to that's why I kept coming back to the bartenders and the chefs. Even if we cook, even if we make all those drinks, can we get a can we get a hoe and dig the land? Can we grow something? Like, it's important so that we connect, we understand. Let's not just talk about it. Let's do it. Let's get our hands dirty with all the mud and
Well, I will
uh,
definitely give it a go at my home this summer. I will grow my first garden of herbs, and I hopefully they will survive. If I will
they
always
will for you.
I'll contact you if I need if something happens with my.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for thanks for this. This was amazing. Do you have? I know this last year, this month is Women History Month, and it was an honor to host you. Any words you wanna give to the amazing women who are listening, or any words of advice to young women coming up in the industry?
Well, believe in yourself. Kind of something I've struggled a lot with in my career is that imposter syndrome is where that little saboteur in your head that tells you that you're not good enough or people won't listen to you or I would say get rid of him and go for what you want. Find people, talk to people, and I've every time I've approached someone with something, uh, receive like people want to share their passion, especially in the hospitality industry. We have some of the most passionate people, and we all we want to do all day is talk about what we do because we love it so much. So reach out, create a community, create links and network that will make you grow and then you feel comfortable in, and just go for things you want. Like people, I find sometimes we tend to, and I'm guilty of this also, to just don't feel comfortable going for what I want. But no, we are amazing people, and like every single woman is amazing and has something to contribute. And I think we should just my tip is ultimately go for it. Go for what you want and state your dreams.
And what's the one cocktail anyone should have as a beginning?
Wow, I can. Wow, but oh my god, that's like the hardest question as a first
Yeah,
cocktail.
just one cocktail that you think that everyone should try, and it should not be a mojito, because mojitos are not anything to are not a Long Island.
Well,
What?
I say probably a daiquiri, like a proper daiquiri, because that's when you realize the importance of a well-made cocktail. Because a daiquiri is a
Okay.
simple recipe, but I've had so many not well-made daiquiris, and it sounds so simple, but it's not. That's when I found it's one of those cocktails where your craft shows through so much. So a daiquiri would be my go for a nicely made, beautiful lime daiquiri.
Finally, someone who understands that the daiquiri is the epitome of whether you can make a drink or not. None of this other fancy stuff.
Yes, definitely. That's always my go-to. Thank you so much for having me. It's really been a pleasure and an honor talking to you this evening.
Thank you so much. Have a good night or a good afternoon, right?
At 7 p.m. I mean I'm gonna put my pajamas on TV for now.
Good night. Take care. God bless. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye bye. Hey folks, I hope you all had an amazing time with Emily tonight. This was a blast. We had such an amazing time. I will see you guys on the next episode. I don't know if you guys have a guest you want to have in mind for next week, or yeah, let us know. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode. God bless and have a good night. Ciao.